Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Dallas Summer Musical's weekly masterclass presented by the Education and Community Partnerships Department. We're so excited to have Denise Lee as our special instructor today. It's going to be a wonderful class, but before we get started, just a couple ground rules. Make sure you leave yourself on mute. If you have any questions throughout this lesson, go ahead and leave them in the chat box below. There are going to be some times where Denise might ask a question directly to you. If you want to raise your hand, just via video, I'll unmute you so you can answer. And pretty much just standard Zoom etiquette that we're all used to by this point. So I don't want to waste any of your time. I'm going to throw it over to Denise Lee, who will show you all about Cabaret. Let me unmute you, Denise. There you go.
All right, let's hope I can teach you all about Cabaret. Good morning. Do I get to see your beautiful faces, or can I not see your beautiful faces? Look, it's morning. If I put on makeup, y'all got to show me your faces.
It's like if y'all want to unmute or show your camera, we want to see your smiles.
I do. Come on, rise and shine. Right?
Don't be scared.
Like, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Why would we do that? Ooh, mess with my light. Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Autumn. We appreciate you showing me your beautiful face this morning. So let me tell you a little bit about me. My name is Denise Lee, and I like to consider myself a cabaret artist. And we'll talk a little bit about cabaret in just a minute. I have been doing piano bar type performing for about the last 15 years. I have been a musical theater performance in Dallas for the last 30 plus years. So I have a little bit of experience. I like to consider cabaret, the art form itself, that if musical theater and lounge singing had a child, it would be cabaret. Because the importance, one of the major differences is you're allowed to break that fourth wall. It is still very important to understand that it is a performance, so it shouldn't be so relaxed that you lose control of it. You still have to be mindful of the things that are going on around you, but you also have to be very attuned to your audience. So first of all, I'd like to ask you, what do you think, what is cabaret? What do you think cabaret is? Just anybody, you can raise your hand, you can put it in the chat. There are no wrong answers. No? You're a little shy, you're slow getting started this morning. Okay, good. I'm seeing more faces. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Yes. Anybody, just any idea? Well, let me ask you this. Any of you want to be a cabaret performer? Or thought about it?
I think.
Okay.
Hey, Adam, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
I was just going to say I've thought about it very briefly.
Okay, well, I lost you a little bit.
Oh, here, let me get closer to the mic.
Okay.
I said that I've thought about being a cabaret performer, but I'm honestly very uneducated on what it is and what it's all about. Okay. So that's why I'm here.
Great. So go ahead. Devon, would you put up the first slide, please? Okay. The first one should be, what is cabaret, I think. Do you have that? Yeah. Okay, so one of the things about cabaret performance, there is an atmosphere of intimacy. The room can be incredibly huge, but you can create an atmosphere that makes it so it looks that you are performing one-on-one with a very small audience. It's as if you were performing a show in someone's living room. There should be a story and song connection in your show. When you create the show, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes, you should create a show that there's a theme and it has a central idea. So all of your songs should tie into that idea, and then the stories that go with those songs, because banter is incredibly important. As in the next point, banter, connection with the audience, and no fourth wall. It's the same if you've ever gone to, which you probably haven't, because all of you are high school students, gone to a nightclub. It's a nightclub type performance where someone stands and sings and talks to you. Individualization of material. It's really important that the material you choose fits who you are. And it's usually performed with a piano or a small combo. In talking about what cabaret used to be, a lot of times it initiated a lot in New York, and Chicago still has a few cabaret clubs. Here in Dallas, cabaret means sometimes something a little bit different. So I encourage people to hashtag real Dallas cabaret, because people tend to think of other things or more burlesque type of entertainment. So what we try to do right now when I present my shows is say real Dallas cabaret. If I can go back to their faces right now. Thank you, Devon. So one of the things that's important to remember is to be able to create a show that expresses who you are, no matter what music, no matter what type of arrangements you choose. So what I want to talk about now are a little bit of the styles, the type of styles of cabaret shows. Can I have the next slide, please? The styles of cabaret show. So you can have single composers, and you see I've just listed a few here. And those, it's important to realize the composer shows are, of course, the people who wrote the shows, not necessarily the songs, not necessarily the people who performed them. And you see Gershwin, Ellington, Baccarat, Dorothy Fields, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Dorothy Fields, but she was one of the first female composers to win an Oscar. So a lot of my shows pay tribute to women composers and musicians. So you can also have the performer theme show. If you're a Barbra Streisand, or if you like Ella Fitzgerald, and those are people probably that I would perform more, but you might be interested in them too. It used to be that cabaret focused more on show tunes, and they called them the standards. Now, in the cabaret series that I produce, I invite and encourage people to do shows on anything that they would like, any style of music, as long as they have created the atmosphere for cabaret. You can do topic theme shows, and those two that you see on the screen are two of the shows that I've done. It's Divas of American Music, which I pay tribute to female American singers and songwriters. And then the other show that I do is called Too Old, Too Fat, Too Black, Songs I'll Never Sing on Broadway. One of the most important things you can do is come up with a catchy topic that makes people want to see your show. Okay, can I go back to their faces? Makes them want to see your show. When I did the show Too Old, Too Fat, Too Black, folks immediately were like, what is that going to be about? And really what the theme of the show were songs that I'll never be cast, for shows I'll never be cast in, because I'm either too old, too fat, or too black. And so the banter in between each of those songs was dealt with why I selected that song, why it was important to me, and why it was, and for what reason. So you have to be able to kind of, the way I put my shows together, I select songs that I want to sing, and then I find a theme that puts them all together. Everybody, you're going to have to find what works for you if this is something that you want to do. I had no idea I would enjoy what's called cabaret at this point. For the last 6 years now, actually, going into our 6th year, I produce a cabaret series called the Denise Lee on Stage Cabaret Series, where we help people put together cabaret shows and then they perform them at the Bathhouse Cultural Center. I also do a show called So You Think You Can Cabaret, which are budding and aspiring cabaret artists and I work with you in putting together 10 minutes of a cabaret show, and then you come and perform them, people vote, and whoever wins gets a 45-minute set at the Dallas Cabaret Festival, which we founded 5 years ago. And we have 3 nights of cabaret. So I'll talk to you about that later if you're interested in being in our So You Think You Can Cabaret once we all come off quarantine. So Any questions so far about the styles or types of cabaret shows? Because again, I want you to pick artists and things that are important to you. One of my rules is I don't sing anything that doesn't move me. When I'm putting together a show, I don't do any song that in some way does not make me feel a certain way, whether it's angry, whether it's nostalgic, whether it is, happy, it can make me sad. It has to move me. I have to have a reason to sing it, because if it doesn't move you, it will not move an audience. And in a cabaret atmosphere, which is different than theater, your whole point is to connect with them. Think of it as performing and inviting people to your home and singing. You want them to be comfortable. You want them to feel everything that you feel in that moment. Does that make sense? Great. And I'm going to keep trying to check the chat if you all have questions, because you can post them. You can post questions in the chat if you don't want to ask them out loud. I'll try to address them. I may get to them, I may not. And we'll also have the question and answer toward the end, okay? Let's go to the pitfalls to be careful of. So the pitfalls, the cliche shows, songs decade by decade. By the time you get to the fourth decade, you have pretty much lost your audience. Because if you say, well, now we're going to sing a song from the 1950s, and now we're going to sing a song from the 1960s. Again, these are pitfalls to be careful of. You can do them, but you have to be able to craft them well. You have to have stories that make them fun, that make the audience want to go decade by decade. The impression cabaret, unless you're really good at impersonating someone, you may not want to do it. There is nothing worse than sitting through a 75-minute show with a bad impressionist, unless it's intended to be really bad, which then would make it funny. So make sure that, again, there are a lot of people who do Judy Garland or Liza Minnelli, but you have to be good at it, because when you impersonate an artist, you hopefully will choose someone that is beloved. People really love them. So if they come to hear it, they're coming to hear a really good impression. The vanity cabaret. You want to be careful of my life and song. And while I know your life is interesting, and you know my life is interesting, everyone else, unless it is just extraordinary, it has to be more than, well, I fell in love. Or, and then my parents, this or that. It has to be out of the ordinary. So be mindful of your life and song and what makes it extraordinary, what makes it so interesting that someone else will go, wow, I never knew that. And how do you make that interesting? My coming out story. Be mindful that while that is a wonderful thing, how far can you stretch that without having to repeat the same story in 75 minutes? You know, what you don't want to go, well, before I was afraid to tell my parents and this, and it falls into, you don't want to continue to think inward. You also want to think outward about your audience. What is it that you would like to hear in a cabaret that makes it interesting? If somebody in the audience is going, well, I did that too. Well, I did that too. Yeah, that's me. After a while, they want to hear clear and interesting facts that they might not know. The next is, I first started singing when I was 8 years old. And then you go, I first started, you don't want to think of so often in I. That's why it's called the vanity cabaret. Be careful about all of the I things. It's okay to make it about you, but make it about you in conjunction with the bigger world, if that makes sense. The woe is me. Everybody hates me, but I survived. You don't want to leave the room down. You never, even if you want to take them on a journey, but you don't want to, and then my dog died. Let me sing a song about it. Here it goes. And then my husband left me. And then I suffered through a severe bout of alcoholism. I have seen these shows. You don't want to do that. You don't want shows that people will want to slit their wrist when they go, or that they feel sorry for you and think you might need therapy. You do not want, You always want to give them moments of nostalgia without and without leaving them there. You should always end on a high note. My dating life, just don't. And so, again, you can, but do you really want to? And then go back to their faces. Because I have often thought of creating those kinds of shows, but in order to create a successful show in one of those areas, you have to be willing to be completely vulnerable. And I mean completely vulnerable. If you're going to tell a show about your life, you have to be prepared to tell it. And then you have to ask yourself, how much do I really want people to know? You will see maybe big celebrities that will tell those types of things, because at that stage where they are, they don't care that, somebody knows that they've been divorced. Most of the time, those things are already in the news. But how much do you really want people to know about you if you're going to do a My Life type cabaret? So be mindful of that in putting together your shows. The other thing I want to tell you too, in thinking, putting together your show, be fearless. You have to be fearless. You have to be prepared. You can't worry about what someone else will think. Put together a show that you love and that you want to share. Because you want what you want to be, not because you want people to applaud you or people to love you. It is because you have a show that shares a message that you want to share with everybody else, that brings you joy, that brings you laughter. You want to be able to share that so that when they leave, they feel everything you shared with them in the midst of that show. Make sense? Yeah? Any questions so far? None? Okay. So let me ask you this. What would you think would be the first thing you need to do? If you're going to put together a cabaret show, what do you need to do first? Yes, let's go, Violet.
Research.
That's good. Yep. Research. Autumn.
Maybe find like a topic or a theme that you want to do.
Okay. Anybody else? All those are good. And I ask that because what you have to do is find, again, what works for you. One of the things that I told you is I love to be able to find songs that I love to sing, and then I find a way to put them all together. When my very first cabaret show was Divas of American Music. And so what I do is, because I tend to not like to sing songs all from one composer, all from one artist. It's easier for me to be able to take people on a journey with different styles of music. So my first show were songs from Billie Holiday, Barbra Streisand, Bonnie Raitt, Dolly Parton, that kind of thing, one of my first shows. And then what I did was I picked those songs, and all of those were songs by people who wrote the songs. The beautiful composer. What's her name? My daughter will kill me because she was in that show. Come on, she wrote Natural Woman.
Carole King.
Yeah. Carole King, thank you so much. And they're all looking at me like, who? I know, it was before you were
Beautiful
born.
show.
I know.
Beautiful show.
Yeah. So yeah, she wrote that. This show is called Beautiful. But what I did was, in order to segue, I did a tribute and I sang a couple of songs. I sang a song by Carole King, and then she was the composer. But then I said, sometimes people write songs, but then when a singer sings the song, it becomes their own. For instance, Carole King wrote Natural Woman, but when we think of the song Natural Woman, well, people of a certain age, we think Aretha Franklin, because she took that song and made it completely her own. So I segued into that by wanting to sing, because Aretha Franklin was a singer-songwriter in her own right, but that was how I segued into her. So find a way, because song order is important. So if you will put the next slide, what do I do first? All right, so you can show theme selected, choose one. If you pick your theme first, then you choose your songs, how do you relate to the theme, and then stories that relate to the theme or songs. So you need to come up with witty banter is what I call it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the things you want to be careful is not repeating your banter. Well, we'll get into banter in a minute. I'll move through this. Songs, if you've selected your songs first, then you find a theme that ties them together, like I was just talking to you about a minute ago. And then you fill in the gaps with your banter and stories that relate. So you can do them in whichever order you choose, what's easier for you, then you can do that. All right. Can we just go to the next slide? The what and why of banter. I find that a lot of people, that this is the part that scares them the most. What am I gonna say? What do I say to people? I tend to wing it. What I do is, because I work better that way. And by winging it, what I mean is I know what I'm going to talk about, but I might not know exactly what I'm going to say. And the reason is because I want to be able to relate to my audience. I may have written something that when I get into the room may not necessarily fit the audience that's in the room. And so I have become better at speaking just on the cuff. I'll have a topic and I'll know I want to talk about this here, but I don't write exactly what I'm going to say. And then I'll explain to you why in just a second. Let's start at the top. Banter drives the show, but it is not the show. The show is the songs, but the dialogue in between the shows is just as important. Be your genuine self. I cannot express how important that is. Share your own story in your own voice. And by that, I mean, be able to know what you're singing about in your song. Don't just sing a song because you think you sound good singing it. It needs to mean something to you so that you're able to relate that to your audience. Don't ramble. I tend to ramble, but I recognize that I ramble, and that has become my shtick. So whatever you tend to do, if you can make it work for you, fine, but recognize what doesn't and what doesn't work. So focus, clarity, and relevance are important. Stay on point, again, allowing for spontaneity, because just like in theater, you don't want to ignore what's in the moment. If you're on stage and you're having coffee in the midst of a play and somebody drops a cup, you don't ignore that you dropped the cup. You get up and you mop up and you do whatever it is, but you continue. So if you're in the midst of a cabaret show and there's this huge noise, I have been known to stop and go, okay, I know y'all heard that, because you acknowledge that in the moment. People want to see the real you. Relevance. Banter should tie the songs together. I've explained how that goes. Tie songs to the overall theme. So you can tie one song to the next, but then they all should relate to the theme of your show. And then strive for a balance between speaking and singing. Can we put the script up now? I want to just show you briefly an example when I did one of my very first shows. This helped me. I don't do this as much anymore. What I did was I wrote out, I tell you, I pretty much wing it. But what I did the first time, because I just wasn't sure, you have to experiment until you find what's good for you. And then I wrote this out for my musician, my music director, so he would know where I was going to go. So what I did was I put the first song together and wrote out any and everything that I might want to say. I did not memorize this verbatim. It's so important just to know what you want to say, more so than exactly how you're going to say it. If you know the story, you can move it along, whether you forget the exact words, whether you remember the words or not. So this gave them direction as to how much. I'm sure that they would wish that I would put these kinds of scripts together for them still. I don't. They just tend to follow me now. But it's very important that you have that kind of relationship with your musicians so they know where you're going. So you've mapped out, this was my map, and I needed to know where I was going to go. If we can go back to their faces. I want to talk, because how much time? I've got about another, 12, 15 minutes before question and answer? Great.
Yeah, about
Yeah, good. We won't talk about that. I want to talk about the different, we're going to go, not yet, but we're going to go next to selecting instrumentalists. So one of the things that I wanted to say about, forgive me for getting it, you know, the banter is that comes with the no fear. You have to be willing to put yourself out and say, I wish there is a video, and maybe I'll put that on YouTube or something. I'll give you a link that if you all want to go back and look, it was a very spontaneous moment in between songs. One of the biggest and most important things is being yourself. And the reason is people want you to succeed. And people like you. They wouldn't be there if they didn't like something about what you're presenting, who you are. If they know, they want you to do good. They also want to know that you're human. You know, we forget lyrics. We get so caught up sometimes that we make ourselves nervous that it has to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. 9 times out of 10 in a cabaret show, something is going to go wrong. Just like on stage, as musical theater performance, something is going to go wrong. And so you can't be in your head about how you look, how you sound. You have to walk that line of confidence that says, I have something to say, and I'd like to share it with you. Not, I have something to say, let me show you how good I am, or how perfect I am, or how great my voice sounds. As artists, while we have to focus on us, we also have to focus on our audience. Our whole job is to make other people happy. I can say that's, you know, and when I do that, I make me happy. I have, and then on the reverse of that, I have to love what I do. And if I love what I do, people will love what I do. I will stop. I was in a show at one point and forgot half the lyrics. And I got to the second verse. I was like, okay, we have to stop and start this over because these people paid more money. They paid money to see at least 60% of the words. And you start over. If you make a mistake, don't be embarrassed. People will do that. And you go, you know what? I need to start over, because if not, you'll stay in your head. If you make a mistake and sing the wrong verse, then you're like, oh my God, what am I gonna do when I get there? I have sung the second verse first and couldn't think of the first verse, and go, you know what? It sounded so good, we're gonna repeat it. And then I sing the second verse. But you just go with the flow, because there's nothing you can do about it once it happens, okay? I'm not gonna cover too much about the next 2 slides, other than I wanna explain the difference between the two, because this is something I had to learn later in life. We just think of a piano player. Make sure you know what your accompanist, pianist, musical director likes to be called. Some pianists don't want to be called an accompanist. Some accompanists don't want to be called pianists. Check with them and ask them. Find your way of communicating with them. I have a great relationship with the guy that plays for me, my musical director, my pianist. He doesn't care, but I also respect the fact that I've asked him. I have a couple who want to be called a pianist and not an accompanist. Some don't mind if I'm giving cues. Some people snap. Some find that highly offensive. Find a way to communicate. For me, if I do that and point, Norman doesn't mind. We communicate and he gets me. So find the way to work with whoever's playing for you. If you put up the instrumentalist, I want to explain a little bit between the difference between an instrumentalist really quickly. If you've got an accompanist, you go to that person with all your charts prearranged and in the right keys. All music has been selected. Pianist rehearses and plays your show, and no other work is required. He is truly just accompanying you. Do not go into an accompanist and ask them to do the next things I'm about to show you, which is the musical director or arranger. Go to that next slide. That person collaborates with you, helps you to bring your show vision. You talk about what songs should I do, how they arrange the music in terms of, I've gone to my companies and said, you know, I want to sing these two songs. Can we find a way to put them together? They work at putting them together, and you work at how you want. So, you know, I only want to sing these lyrics. I mean, so the two of you work together on that. Instrumentation, orchestration, they do that. That person is your band leader, and they can either hire the other musicians, or you can tell them what musicians you want. They are an important part of the show because you have to collaborate. If you do mess up something, you have to be able to signal them and let them know where you want to go. Norman and I usually get together first and go over everything in the show, and then we have a band rehearsal. You have to have a good working relationship on and off stage. That's important. Can I go back to their faces? You never, ever want to perform when you are angry with your musicians or your lead musician. If you all have had a feud, resolve it. Because there is an energy that comes about. You don't want to take any negative energy with you on stage. If you all haven't agreed on something, if you haven't a feud, you put that aside and you come to the show ready to do the show. That's with anything. Don't ever bring those outside energies, negative energies onto your show, especially in a cabaret, because you are being who you are, and the audience will feel that. They will know when you are not upset. I learned that the hard way. My best friend and I did, he's a piano player. And the one fight we had, we were mad in that whole night. Usually people go, they just love each other. We can see it. And that's what they loved about who we were. And we weren't looking at each other. We were, you ready? Okay, we're gonna sing this next one. All right, and I was friendly with the audience, but there was an energy, and people were uncomfortable because we were uncomfortable. So make sure that you are incredibly comfortable in your own skin, in your own space, because the best part about this is your show. When you put this together, it is yours. It is not a play written by somebody else that you're trying to convey their feelings. This is your show, and let it say what you want it to say. Song interpretation. Let's go to that slide. I'm gonna have a sip of coffee. And know what you're singing about. It's not about the notes you hit, it's about the way you express them. Sometimes you want to put together a song that it doesn't have the same intent. Sometimes you can, and these are some of the details. Happy becomes sad, major becomes minor. Sometimes you can take a song that was done really fast and make it slow, and it changes the entire meaning of it. So understand, you can think outside the box about song interpretation and everything that you song and what the meaning is to you. Altering the meaning from the original, changing styles. And this doesn't always have to be like fast to slow to make the ballad, because people tend to think, if I do a show with all ballads and people will be moved. No, a lot of times you'll put people to sleep if you do all ballads. Unless I have done a show of all ballads, but I've told people from the beginning, or the theme of the show was the ballads I love. And then there's a different, sometimes, energy to ballads. They don't have to be fast, but sometimes there's more of an intensity to some, and so there's still a variation. Changing the styles of the song, gender bending. If you're familiar with Uptown Players, they do a fundraiser every year called Broadway Our Way, where women sing songs that are done by men in the original shows and vice versa. So if that's a theme that you want, do it, but again, do it well. Knowing how your song fits into your show. If it doesn't fit, don't force it. So often there were songs that I wanted to go into certain shows that I did, and it's like, but I just want to sing it. And it didn't fit the theme of the show. Now, at times you can just say, sometimes what I have done at the end of the shows, this doesn't fit, but I wanted to sing it, so I hope you don't mind. If you can get away with that, do it. And if you don't, put it in your good idea, but not now file. If that's fine, you can put another show together when you sing it. So if you go back to their faces, because I want to talk about these last two things really quick, but I want to see your faces. When I say if you can get away with it, as you're just starting out, you want to be really confident in what you do. So you might, unless you're just really good on your feet, you might want to plan out pretty much. You don't want to say, one of the things about memorizing your script for your show is that it becomes memorized, and it's like, good morning, I thank you so much for being here, and people know that you're actually saying script. That is the last thing you want to do in cabaret performing. You want them to feel, hey, come on in. I'm so glad you're here. How you doing? Good to see you. If you see, my mom's here. Hey, Mom, thank you. I'm so glad you all are here because I was scared to death. This is my first show, and I had no idea what I was going to do. So I just want y'all to love me no matter what I do. However you started off, bring them in at the beginning so that they know, okay, we can sit down and we can all relax, and have a good time. Last quickly, I'm probably not going to show the slides, Devon, but I want to be sure that you all understand the difference between show business and business. And I understand they call it show business for a reason. So often we don't address the fact that what we do is a business. And no matter how well you sing or how beautiful of an artist and an actor you are, this is still a business. If you're going to get paid, you need to understand that part of it. Booking your show, finding a venue, who's going to pay the musicians? Are they going to pay you and you contract the musicians? How much is the venue going to cost? You have to put together a budget for your show. Are you going to have food, wardrobe? Guys have it easy. They throw on a suit or maybe a pair of jeans. We got makeup. We've got dresses to buy, shoes. We've got that whole. The other thing we don't think of is music and copying music for your musicians. I take care of my musicians. I try to bring them snacks. And because if you take care of them, they will take care of you. Be respectful to the people who help you, because while it's your show, it takes a whole support team to put that show together. So, when we're at rehearsal, I bring water or juice and just something like that so they'll have something there. I make sure they have water. If the venue doesn't provide it, find out what the venue will provide. You have to negotiate. If somebody's asked me to sing at a restaurant, I make it a point. They say, we'll have dinner for you. Yes, but I also want dinner for my band. So make sure that, don't be afraid to ask. And that's anything in this business, because all they can say is no. And if they want you, you'll find a happy medium, but don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't go in expecting that they have to, but don't be afraid to ask for it. So understand that part of it is being professional and on time, and singing and providing the best entertainment, but part of it is also being professional on the business aspect. Get a contract. Make sure you have everything in writing. And these days, if you've talked to somebody, send them an email. This is just to confirm what we talked about. And if there's a contract and you don't understand it, give it to somebody who can read through it with you. Don't just assume everybody is trustworthy. And that's a hard thing to think, but we've been friends for so long. I send contracts to my best friends who come and do cabaret shows. We have a contract. That's business. Not to say they'll cheat me or I'll cheat them, but so we all understand the terms of it. So understand the difference in between. That's one of the biggest things to remember, that it is a business. You are your own commodity. It took me a while to understand that. I have a commodity. This is what I do for a living. The same way, you go into a bank, people work for or have their own businesses. Plumbers have their own businesses. This is your business, your talent, your gift. So I think I want to see if any of you have, let's talk, let's share. tell me if there's something that you heard, or is it something that you'd like to explore? Um, Before we start that, I want to tell you, we do a full-fledged workshop. My partner in crime, Jeff Lankoff, who is extraordinary pianist. He and I put together this workshop. And usually when you come in, and I love if you're interested in doing it, we're going to host another one later this year, that has you come in and you bring 2 songs and banter. We have you put together 10 minutes. And you sing and you perform, and then we critique and help you to put together. And by the end of the show, by the end of the workshop, you have the tools to really work and putting together your show. And we also will assist you in putting together your own show for the first time. So I wanted to be sure that he got full credit for that. It was so many things on there that I was like, but Jeff is like, no, from the other side of that, so have a person you can bounce ideas off of as well. Don't just rely on yourself. That's why it's either important to have that pianist or accompanist or someone said, this is what I thought about, to bounce those ideas off of. So do any of you have any questions or just thoughts that you want to ask me or share? Yes, Autumn?
I was wondering what the rehearsal process and even just like putting together a show, what that process would look like from start to end.
Okay. For me, what I pick the songs, or now I tend to still kind of pick the songs, or I'll get a theme in my head. I'm gonna do a live stream show that we're putting together now. So we'll get through this. And they're gonna be songs that, because of where we are this time, are really motivational to help uplift. And so that's what the theme of the show is. So whatever comes to me first, and I write those songs down. And then, because I have a musician, I go to his place and we find the keys and make sure everything that I want is in the right key. Again, I've worked with him for so long, so it's gonna be, you have to find, I've gone through 2 or 3 different pianists or companies to find who works well for me. You have to find someone that works well with you the way you are, not that wants to change the way you work, if that makes sense. And you the same way, you all have to mesh. We get together, we find the keys and the arrangement, what verses I want to sing, how I want them to sing, if we want to do any collaboration as far as arranging of 2 songs to go together and how they will. We schedule a rehearsal with the band and we come in. For me, I don't necessarily come in singing that full out. It may take you more than 1 rehearsal. Find out how much they're going to charge you. How much is it you're going to, that you're going to need to pay, what's required, and know where you're going to get the money from, or the venue. Or if somebody hires you, if I were to bring you in to do a show, to find out how much I'm going to pay so you know how much to pay your musicians. That's important to know before you call your musicians, because you need to be able to tell them, hey, I'm doing a show, it'll be this long, and this is how much I have to pay for 1 rehearsal and a performance, or 2 rehearsals and a performance. Let them know how many times you'll want. Be very prepared, because if you don't have a lot of money, you're not going to want to do 2 rehearsals or 3 rehearsals. You go in prepared. What I do is I go in, musicians by that time have their music. They play through everything for them. I record it. That rehearsal for me is mainly for the band, and then I record it, and then I go home and rehearse with that recording. Because what we tend to do so often is rehearse with the song we've heard on the radio. Once I have learned the song, I put that away, because you don't want to imitate the version you've heard. Even if you're singing that arrangement of it, you still want to make it your own. So then if I rehearse with the band that I'm going to hear, then I can put my own flavor in that. And once you do that, we get there about an hour before, if we want to cover anything in the venue, want to see, and then we go. And that is it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Violet.
I have 2 questions. The
Sure.
first one is, do you have like sets and props and lights and stuff like that?
Yes, props can be dangerous. just so you know. And by dangerous, I don't mean you fall off the stage. I just mean trying to, I will tell you with my Too Old, Too Fat, Too Black show, I come out and you can, if you do a search, you will find many pictures of me dressed up as an old Annie, because I come out dressed as Annie with a bad wig, a martini glass, and a cigarette, as if I'm too old to play Annie. And I come out as that. And the next song that I do, I can't remember what I said. Oh yeah, I started off with a song from Pippin. But then I do My Strongest Suit from Aida. And I decided it would be great to change clothes on stage. That's what I decided. So what I have done is I had to, first of all, then I really have to find a dress that will fit under this Annie dress. That won't be wrinkled when I take off this Annie dress. So there's all of the things you have to think about that at first I didn't really think about. And then I had a partition on stage. So what I did was, when I realized this might not go as smoothly because I was going to sing as I changed clothes. So I enlisted the help of a very dear friend who is an incredibly funny man, BJ Cleveland, to help and assist me. So what I did was I went behind the partition as I was singing My Strongest Suit. And I had, didn't think about it, didn't get a law, had a handheld mic. So when you talk about things going wrong and be able to, but making the best of it, it was like, I didn't think this through, people, so they could hear me behind the partition. When I came out as I was singing, BJ put my shoes on, my earrings. By the time we got to the song, I was completely dressed. I was perspiring profusely. And while it didn't go the way I had planned it in my head, it was incredibly successful because we just went with the moment. Whether I forgot half the words, and then later I have made that work better. But you go with what you know. So I had like a boa, we had earrings, we had to take the wig off, had to let my hair, all within the 2.5 minutes of My Strongest Suit, which required the band. I was like, play that again, I'm not ready. You know, you have to be able to again, that's where the no fear comes in. You just go with it. If it doesn't work, you got, hold on, I got to fasten this other shoe. So you make it your own. So you want to be careful of too many props. We did the Rat Pack again. Some of you may not be old enough to remember the Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and they did, the 4 of them would come out. And one of their big things is they drank. So we had a little bar on stage, which was with water, and it just to kind of simulate what, you know, to tie into that. So when you're having beverages on stage or anything, you have to be really careful again. So we had like that on stage, and we had, you know, martini glasses with water, so it would look like they were that kind of thing. You all can't do that kind of show. Do not go home and tell your parents that I told you to do a Rat Pack show. Do not get me in trouble. As I said that, I went, am I telling these children we drank on stage, which we did not. So don't do that. Don't do that. But find what works for you. If you've got, you know, if you're going to have beverages, if you're going to have balloons, play with them before your show. Know exactly where they come in. Don't just say, okay, yeah, this time we're gonna, you know, we'll bring that out, and unless you're completely comfortable with it. Make sense? Anybody else?
Violet, did you have a second question?
Actually, yes, I do. Do you ever perform like not solo? Like, do you have people come on and do duets with you, or do the whole show with you? Or is it just mainly solo?
Yeah, it used to be a lot of times, it was with Cabaret years ago, it was a lot of times the performer and the piano. I preface what I'm gonna say with this. I like the whole, again, it's about creating atmosphere. I hate using just a keyboard, and I know that's the thing. I try to create an atmosphere. We have a keyboard at the bathhouse, but it's encased in a piano casing, a little baby grand piano, because that creates atmosphere. And sometimes you want an elegant atmosphere, sometimes you want a comfortable atmosphere. It's about creating the atmosphere. Sometimes I have to do it with just a keyboard. We have to make that happen, but then there's still the intimacy of the atmosphere. I've had people do duet shows where it's just them with someone else playing a guitar. So piano doesn't have to be the instrument of choice. I do have combo three-piece. I've done duet shows. My friend Gary Floyd and I did a show called Duets. And we went through and we sang some of the best and worst duets in history, Muskrat Love. What should I? So we did, we dressed up as Sonny and Cher. We dressed up as Captain and Tennille a little bit. We talked about props. And we had one little section where we had the props that tied in long wigs and that kind of thing to, again, provide levels. You can bring in someone that you want to sing one song, or if you want them to be part of your whole song, your whole show. If your band sings, utilize them for background vocals if you need those. The important thing is to just remember, you really want to try to create, I don't care if it's 2 or 200, to create a show that people still feel like you're relating to them. The first time I did my Too Old, Too Fat, Too Black show, I had no idea that people were that interested. Usually our cabaret series, maybe 50 to 60 people would come, and we have created lighting. 500 people showed up at the Women's Building at Fair Park. So trying to make that an intimate show was indeed a challenge. But talk to your audience. Do I have some birthdays? Do I have some, and so people feel a part of it. There are different ways to create that kind of intimacy. And do I have this next song, it's really sweet and reminds me of this. Do I have any anniversaries? Okay, I want you to hold their hand, or if you don't like them, just hold their hand for a minute. Find a way that people feel part of your show. And that helps create intimacy. Anybody else? How many of you are going to be in my So You Think You Can Cabaret? Even if you're not, just lie, make me feel good. Raise your hands. Yay! See, look.
Denise, can I throw a question out there for you?
You absolutely can.
Could you maybe talk just really, really briefly about cabaret versus what we might think of as like a senior showcase when these students get off to college and they're doing that to get promoted and recognized?
Okay. When you say, when you're putting on, I guess, your senior showcase, you're at that point selling yourself, if you will, so people will know. You want people to see who you are and know, and you're not there necessarily, you're there to entertain, but it is like you're showcasing who you are. In the event of cabaret, it is, hey, this is not necessarily about me, it's about the message I have to give you, if that makes sense. It is, when you talk about songs that are important to you, there was a song I never thought I would sing, Danny Boy. And never thought I would sing Danny Boy. And I was in China for 6 months performing. And but when you talk about changing the meaning of the song and how it relates, this is when you say you wouldn't do necessarily Danny Boy in a senior showcase for me, but I put it in my cabaret show because I had a great story to tell with it. And there's a way to you want to make those songs relate to your audience in the midst of a cabaret, where in a showcase thing, you want them to enjoy it, but it's not necessarily, you don't want them to necessarily feel, or that's not your intent. I sang Danny Boy because I met a couple there who didn't speak English at all, and they saw me working on some music. I was sitting down and the guy looked at me and pointed and said, "Singer?" And he and his wife were elderly. And I said, I shook my head, yes, because we talk about how music was universal. And he held his wife's hand and looked and said, "Danny Boy, our favorite." And then he kissed his wife on the cheek. That's all it was. It was the simplest thing. And it made me realize sometimes how universal music is. And that sometimes people they may not understand what you're singing about. They may not understand the language, but they feel the emotion of what you give with that. And when I sang Danny Boy, even though the lyrics meant something totally different, they heard every emotion because they realized how important it was to those people. To give you something more that you can relate to, I sing You'll Be Back from Hamilton. And we know what that's about, but I sing it as a deranged lover. You'll be back. Think about those lyrics. And it's a whole different thing when you think about, yeah, I'll kill your friends and family to remind you, la, la, la. So it means something totally different, and it changes and it makes it a little bit fun. So think about how lyrics can be used, you know, in different ways to make your show fun and interesting, because when you make people think, and that's what you want to do, then they enjoy it and they go home talking about it. And that's what you want them leaving there singing something you sang. Anybody else? Yes. Autumn?
There, oh. I think
There we go.
I'm
It took a second to get that unmuted. How did you get into cabaret performing? Did you always know that that was something you wanted to do, or
Nope.
Was it different?
I literally stumbled into a little piano bar. I usually tell this story, called The Hideaway. Many years ago. A friend of mine and a music director around town, in fact, you know Mark Mullineaux. Mark Mullineaux and Amy Stevenson sang at this little dirty, smoky, cloudy, that I'm sure germ-filled bar and they said, come hear me sing. So I went down there and somebody said, come sing. I was a musical theater performer. You don't ask a musical theater performer to sit in with a musician she has never rehearsed with and sing in front of people. I was like, oh my God, no. So I did, and it was, you know, because we think we have to rehearse. I have to know how it's going to start. I need to know where we're going in the middle and how we're going to end it. We have to rehearse. And so I sang because I had done a show with Mark before, so we picked that song. So I said, come back and sing on open mic night. And so I went back, and there was this piano player that no one will ever be able to match in my mind. His name was Buddy Shanahan, and he's passed away now. But Buddy ended up playing for me for 10 years. But I came in, he was the director at this little bar. And I went up, and he was this little crusty little old man, and said, what you singing? I don't know. And so I said, God bless the child. And what key? I don't know. You know, these are things I was going in that I'm sure all of you all are learning and reading music and all of the basics that you should know. No key, I sing it about right here. Them that's got, you know, and fortunately, Buddy was good enough. And I sang it, and he said, do you think you want to do that? Because one of his performers went away. So it was supposed to happen, because one of his major performers had left the city, and I sang, and he liked the way I sang. So do you think you'd like to do that? So in 3 weeks, I did my first set. And I was scared to death, because we had not done the rehearsal process. He said, pick 25 songs, come to my apartment, we'll go through them. Okay. I got to his apartment, we'd start a song. He said, okay, that key is good. Yep. All right, next one. I was like, we're not gonna sing it all the way through? Nope. So that's where you learn you have got to be, you know what? We're just gonna go with it. And I called everybody I know. So if you love me, you need to come to this bar. Even if you don't ever go to bars, I need you to be here to support me in this, to see if it's something that I can do. And from that moment, it has become my favorite type of entertaining. I love musical theater. I love plays. I love acting. I love television. But cabaret performing is at the heart, I think, of who I am, because it allows me to express everything I want to express in song. So it's like writing your own mini plays or musicals, if you will. Like your cabaret show is your musical, because you come up with the dialogue and the idea and the content. And so it makes it personal for you, and it's sharing with everybody else. It's the way you can share your own personal gift with the world.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Denise.
Yes.
This was amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story and for teaching us more about cabaret. I am very grateful for all of y'all for showing up and for learning with us today. If you have any questions moving forward, or if you need any more information about cabaret, send us an email. We'll definitely help you out there. And this video will be recorded and posted on YouTube for other people to watch later. So share it with your friends who may have slept in and missed the show today.
Can I say too, if you all have, and know that if you have any, my website, which is not up to date, but hopefully it will be now. You've motivated me to do that. You can email me. I don't mind that at all. DeniseLeeOnStage.com. And just shoot me an email if you have questions. If you want help putting shows together, if you'd like ideas, if you want more information about So You Think You Can Cabaret, shoot me a message. I don't mind at all. So just feel free to reach out in that way too.
Thank you. Yes, take advantage of that. Theater and the arts is really about who you know and those connections that you make. And things like this are a great foot in the door, is a great way to learn and grow as an artist. So thank you so much for being here. See us again next week. We have another great topic that we will be announcing soon. But thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.